Going to give you a lot of information here, starting off with the tropics, of course, well, exclusively talking about the tropics, really. But we'll start with a couple of storms that hopefully won't ever bother us. They are out there, and they are hurricanes. Hurricane Isaac and Hurricane Helene. Both of those came off Africa and formed into hurricanes in the last couple of days. Meanwhile, Florence came off Africa as well. That's this time of year where things typically tend to come from in terms of hurricane formation. That's the one we obviously want to focus our attention on. A couple of things are going to determine where it goes eventually. We've been talking about the high pressure to the north. Well, originally we were talking about this cold front and whether it could pick it up or not. Then we said high pressure building over the northeast would affect it, and it will. But down in the Caribbean, we have an area of low pressure forming. If that were to start forming, there's a chance it could pull this storm, a couple hundred miles off its intended path. So we're going to have to watch that. So none of this is set in stone. The storm has been intensifying rapidly, then weakening rapidly, then intensifying rapidly. The latest is at 140 sustained mile-per-hour winds, gusts to 165. Likely going to stay a Category 4 storm with some fluctuations based on the water temperatures it goes over, based on eye-wall replacement cycles, likely to then late sometime Tuesday afternoon into Tuesday evening come on shore somewhere between Georgetown, which is halfway between Charleston and Myrtle Beach, somewhere between around Georgetown, South Carolina, and Cape Hatteras. Where it goes from there is really going to determine the kind of impacts that we have, plus where it lands initially. It's a lot different if the storm lands down here near Myrtle Beach and heads over here into eastern Tennessee for us than it is if it makes landfall around Morehead City and heads up here near Emporia. Huge difference with those two scenarios. So if this had been even a few years ago, you would have not had a cone yet that showed day 4 or day 5. Used to stop at day 3. So the farther out we get, the less likely it is that the storm's going to be exactly where it was forecast. The various models are all over the place. A lot of people follow different weather sites, and you probably know the Euro is the best performing model. Even it has moved up now significantly northeast of where it was, especially once it got inland. The Myrtle Beach area was the expected impact point with the Euro. Now it is around Wilmington, but more importantly, instead of taking it way over here into extreme southwestern North Carolina, it brings it up here to about the Winston-Salem area, or maybe Danville in Virginia, as it slowly then drifts. So we'll be able to see that as we compare the two models. The red is the European, the yellow is the GFS. We don't think this one is right. The odds are pretty minimal and small that ends up being right. You can see the difference between North Carolina's southern banks, or even south of there near Wilmington for the red, which is the Euro, or getting up here near Hatteras and sort of swinging around for a day or two or more before coming back. Well, that's brand new as well. Then bringing it, the GFS, now bringing it even farther south. So if the Euro is correct, tidal flooding would likely still be major around here. Significant tidal flooding. Winds of tropical storm force would cause mainly damage to trees, not so much structural damage to roofs and that kind of thing. The heaviest rain, meaning the 2-foot rainfall amounts, would stay west of us. We'd have some freshwater flooding here still from some very significant rainfall again, but not maybe 2 feet. If the GFS and or the Canadian are right, Hatteras sort of in that general area, which is far less likely. You want to emphasize that, far less likely. We'd have significant, in fact, severe tidal flooding unlike anything we have seen around here in a century. Winds of over 80 with higher gusts would cause major wind damage, and we'd have torrential rain. We'd get the 2-foot rain amounts. Freshwater flooding would be much worse than what we saw with Matthew. Here's just an example, the GFS rainfall potential, because it has that storm closer to us. It has a foot of rain, even a foot, almost a foot and a half in a few areas when you get down here into North Carolina. And heavy amounts out in western Virginia, catastrophic flooding in the mountains, whereas the European, so that was the GFS rainfall. I think I might have misspoken, the GFS rainfall. The European has 4-5-inch rain amounts for most of us, and then we start getting 6, 8, 9-inch rains. And that's at the I-95 corridor. West of there, even a lot more. So here's what we know. East Coast landfall is very likely as a major hurricane. Where that will happen is still not clear. it's extremely likely, almost a guarantee, that we're going to have heavy, prolonged rainfall after landfall, and we'll just have to wait and see where that ends up. The probability of tropical storm force winds, 100% for North Carolina around here, roughly on the order of 40, so let's see, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% chance, 70 even in a few southern areas, that we get tropical storm force winds. That's sustained, again, over 40 miles per hour. Chance of getting hurricane force winds, 10, 20, 30% across our immediate area, and then obviously much, much higher down to the south. So with Florence, what are the flood threats? Well, flooding is a major concern from two different types of flooding. Rainfall flooding, but storm surge predictions range from a low of around 6 feet of mean lower low water. Low tide is roughly 2.5 feet around here. So 6 feet would be 3.5, 4.5, 5.5. That'd be 3.5 feet above normal for a tidal surge. That's the low end. The high end puts it up around 9.5 feet above mean lower low water. That is 1.5 feet above Isabel. Again, that's only if the storm were to come over Hatteras and sit there for a few days. We do not think that is likely. It is a slight possibility, however, so we have to give you the range of what is possible so that you can plan whether you want to face the odds or not. So again, that's the very latest with Florence. We'll have a lot more information. I'll have a Facebook Live so you can ask some questions, give almost the exact same information, but with a little bit of feedback from you, the viewer. That'll happen roughly 7 o'clock, we think, on Facebook Live. And then, of course, we'll have a complete update coming up this evening. Thanks for watching.